Welcome to the Invite Health podcast, where our degreed healthcare professionals are excited to offer you the most important health and wellness information you need to make informed choices about your health. You can learn more about the products discussed in each of these episodes and all that Invite Health has to offer at www.invitehealth.com/podcast. First-time customers can use promo code podcast at checkout for an additional 15% off your first purchase. Let's get started.
I'm super excited because I've been reading a lot of great, dramatic, riveting research on the oral microbiome. And if you stick with me over the course of the next several episodes, I think you'll be excited too, because it's dramatic. On one hand, it could be a cornucopia of health benefits. On the other hand, it could be a Pandora's box of terrible outcomes. So the oral microbiome is that blend of different microbes that lives in your mouth, the viruses, the yeasts, the bacteria. And if it's good, it's amazing what it could do for you. It's very beneficial for your brain and your heart and your immune system and overall longevity. And if it's not a good blend, it could really dramatically affect your health and lead to some serious consequences and terrible diseases. So I'd like to talk about this over the course of this and maybe the next episode. And then after that, I'm going to really get specific about something called nitric oxide, which seems to be the fountain of youth. If Ponce de Leon wanted the fountain of youth, Ponce de Leon was that guy that landed near Ponte Vedra, Florida, near St. Augustine, and he discovered the fountain of youth and all that nonsense. If he really wanted the fountain of youth, it would be nitric oxide. And nitric oxide can come from good bacteria in your mouth. So we'll talk about that because nitric oxide is core to healing the immune system, slowing down the growth of cancer, maybe even inhibiting the growth of cancer, brain health, heart health, good blood pressure, vitality, endurance, and energy. I mean, all these wonderful things. So we'll get into that. So it's amazing how the bacteria in your mouth affect your entire body. So welcome to my episode. I mean, I could call it the oral microbiome, and maybe nobody will listen to it, or I could give it some kind of punchy name to get you to click on it called One Healthy Habit That's a Disaster, which is true. And we'll get into that. A healthy habit that I think 60 million Americans do every morning, that's just a disaster for your health. So my name is Jerry Hickey. I'm a pharmacist who really specializes in nutrition. I've been studying both I'm a licensed pharmacist, by the way. I've been studying both for decades and decades, since the 1970s. You can find all of the episodes, the Invite podcast episodes, for free wherever you listen to podcasts, or just go to invitehealth.com/podcast. Or just go to their cover page, you can find it, invitehealth.com. You can also find Invite on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or I think they call that X now, at Invite Health. All the info, by the way, about these episodes, that's going to be on this podcast, this evolving podcast, because there's so much to say, so much good stuff to say. And it's so easy to take care of, but it's also so easy to mess up. All of the info is listed in the podcast description, and they want me to say subscribe and give us a review. The review I really would love, but I think if you like these, you're going to subscribe anyway. So that's probably a way of saying that. Well, why not? So your oral microbiome relates to the bacterial mix in your mouth, and it's really important. Oral health is so important. It's so key. Dentists talk about oral health being related to heart disease, but oral health is related to autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and perhaps lupus. It's related to colon cancer and rectal cancer and pancreatic cancer and maybe even breast cancer, but that's kind of a stretch. It's related to Alzheimer's disease. We're going to get into that. It's related to good blood pressure or high blood pressure. We're going to get into all that. I mean, it's really good stuff. It's really fascinating stuff. So your oral health affects your entire body. And if there's good bacteria ruling, they're in a commensal fashion, it leads to overall wellness. If it's bad bacteria ruling, it will lead to disease. Now we have a microbiome is a blend of bacteria. You know, we think that we're like one organism, but we're really part of a massive group of organisms. Us humans, we have not evolved alone. We do not function alone. There's a massive amount of different bacteria and yeast bacteria, like Monelia, you know, the one that causes infections in some people, and viruses, and probably other things living on us and in us. And we have microbiomes all over the body. There's probably even a microbiome in the brain. That's what the most current research is pointing at. There seems to be a microbiome in the lungs, in the heart, in the urinary tract, obviously in women's vaginal tissue, in the breasts. Everybody knows about the microbiome. I would think the bacteria living in our intestines. I think probably everybody should know about it by now. But they also have done a lot of research now, by this point, of the number of bacteria living in the mouth. And if you look at the number of bacteria, the variety, and the vast number of bacteria living in the human body, I mean, they're all over the place. And there's large concentrations of bacteria in women's vaginal tissue. In the breasts, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different bacteria in the breast. That's why you want good bacteria ruling in the breasts, because the good bacteria break down toxins and protect the breasts. They remove toxins from the breasts and estrogens, etc. Of course, in the intestines, there's a very massive amount of bacteria and a very large, different, vast array of bacteria. And in the mouth has a vast array of bacteria, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different bacteria. So you want the good ones to rule. So when we talk about the microbiome, there's always the good and the bad. And you want them kind of functioning together and balancing each other out. And then really good things can happen. And we'll go over some of the good ones in the mouth and some of the bad ones in the mouth as this discussion evolves. And also, how do you promote the good ones and how do you dissuade the bad ones? We'll get into all that. Now, here's the crazy thing. I was listening to this dental researcher recently on YouTube. Okay, you have to be careful what you hear on YouTube. When I look at the health, just a quick dog leg over here of information, a quick sideline. When you listen to the health information on YouTube, some of it is dramatically amazing. A lot of it is terrible. And some of it is a mixed bag. Like I hear a lot of health professionals giving great advice mixed with poor advice. Because you kind of have to worry about every step in the evolution of what you're saying to give really good advice. So I was listening to this dental researcher, and the guy's fascinating. And unfortunately, I didn't write down his name. This was about a month ago. And he said, I remember this clearly, he said that 60% of all diseases, so that would be, of course, like throwing a horseshoe. It's close enough. Approximately 60% of all diseases are caused by oral bacteria in the mouth, or is complicated and affected by the bacteria in your mouth, the composition of the bacteria. So how can it cause it? Well, some bacteria get into the brain and inflame the brain and break down tissues in the brain. We'll get into that. And even cause tauopathies and plaque buildup in the brain, the things involved with Alzheimer's. Other bacteria can escape into the bloodstream and get into the heart and inflame the heart and cause like heart valve disease and bacterial infections of the heart. Other bacteria actually get into the pancreas and the colon and the rectum and trigger cancer growth. So that's one way they kind of directly do things, but they also indirectly affect disease by triggering inflammation, things like C-reactive protein and tumor necrosis factor alpha and different interleukins like interleukin-6 that clog arteries and inflame the lungs and inflame the brain and inflame the kidneys and do all these terrible things and confuse the immune system. So in one way or another, the bacteria in your mouth can either be incredibly beneficial and protective, or they could be truly problematic. So I said that bacteria in the mouth can enter the brain, and this is true. We've known about The herpes simplex virus, that's a virus, it's not a bacterium. The herpes simplex virus, the one that causes cold sores, herpes 1, getting into the brain and triggering Alzheimer's disease. And by all accounts, it's not the only cause of Alzheimer's disease, but it really seems to be a cause of Alzheimer's disease. Well, a gum disease bacteria can also do the same thing. It inflames the ligament around the teeth and breaks down the barrier, the little thin barrier between your gums and your bloodstream. There's a lot of little blood vessels in the gums, and invades the bloodstream. And it can literally travel through the fifth cranial nerve and travel into the brain. The fifth cranial nerve is a nerve involved with facial sensation and chewing. It's called the trigeminal nerve. There's 12 cranial nerves. So the bacterium, P. gingivalis, which leads to gum disease and periodontal disease and leads to, helps with cavities, helps create cavities. This can break down barriers in the gum, get into the blood vessels, and even get into the fifth cranial nerve and use this as a superhighway into the brain. And that cranial nerve goes by the brainstem, the lower part of the brain, and can travel up to the hippocampus, which is involved with memory. So this is serious. They've also found that Porphyromonas gingivalis, P. gingivalis, is involved with bacterial vaginosis, so it could get into the vagina. It gets around. It can get into the respiratory tract. So it really, it's been implicated in autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis because it causes inflammation that kind of attracts the immune system to your joints. And it is found in brain tissue. Like recently they found it in the cerebral cortex and hippocampus of Alzheimer's patients whose tissue had been donated for research. They found that this bacterium, that's singular, is involved with plaque buildup and tau buildup. The plaque is the stuff, you get these kind of long chains of a plaque, beta amyloid plaque. They're called oligomers, and they're insolvent, and they become pro-inflammatory, and they destroy tissues, and they destroy the nerves, and the nerves create this phosphorylated damage, this inflamed damage. It's called a tauopathy, and that's like kind of the end result in Alzheimer's, and it's extremely damaging to the brain. It's extremely damaging to the brain. Now, regardless of how healthy you are, if you're really healthy, like I'm pretty healthy, I'm a 70-year-old, I'm going to be 70 very soon, and I'm in really good health. I know it's in my mouth. It's in everybody's mouth. It's in everybody's mouth. P. gingivalis is in everybody's mouth, even if you're in great health. But of course, if you're in bad health, or you eat a terrible diet, or you don't exercise, or you're really obese, or you smoke, or you drink a lot of alcohol, etc., there's going to be a lot more of it in your mouth. So the more of it in your mouth, the harder it is for the good bacteria to control it. You don't get that crowd control effect. There's also candida in your mouth. Candida albicans, also called moniliasis, when it infects you. Some people get it in the tongue. It can get inside your organs, but a lot of women get vaginal infections of it. Some people get an overgrowth in their intestines, like if they go on powerful antibiotics. H. pylori is in your mouth right now. It's typically in everybody's mouth. H. pylori is a bacterium that could cause gastritis. It can cause ulcers. It can even cause a type of lymphoma in the stomach and small intestine that's very curable. So you want to keep the diversity, and you want to keep the microbes in balance. So when you have sufficient good ones, it keeps the bad ones under control. And the good ones also have additional activities. I mean, I've always explained it like this. I've always been a gardener. I love to garden. I love to plant trees. I love to move my bushes around. I love to plant flowers and all these different things. But I also have a big vegetable garden, and I have a really big pollinator garden. My pollinator garden is probably 30 feet by 10 feet. It's for butterflies and bumblebees and all those good things. In any event, I know that if my vegetables are really healthy, like my cucumbers and my lettuces, etc., they control the weeds. They suppress the weed growth. Well, it's the same thing when you have sufficient good bacteria in your mouth or your intestines or anywhere else in your body, including on your skin, that the good bacteria suppress the functions and the overgrowth of bad bacteria. So how do you take care of the oral microbiome? And this is a really, really important question because we're doing it all wrong. You ever see that guy on TV or he goes, you're doing cable all wrong or you're watching football all wrong? Well, we're doing oral health all wrong. And I think that the dental industry, the people who make toothpaste, the people who make mouthwashes, and the dentists themselves are approaching it in a terrible fashion. Because what they do is they destroy, they kill. So we know that bad bacteria from the mouth, we know at this point, and bad viruses can get into the brain and be a cause of Alzheimer's. Are they the cause? No, there's probably a lot of causes. But they are a cause of Alzheimer's. And if you want to talk about the benefits of good bacteria before I tell you how to improve the number of good bacteria, you got to think that plaque is not all bad. Okay? You don't want plaque too thick because it has to be porous. But when you have plaque, it's bacteria. And it's both good and bad bacteria. So you don't want to completely remove it. You want to control it. Because the plaque will take things like hydroxyapatite, a form of calcium. It'll take boron. It'll take magnesium and other minerals, and it'll rebuild your teeth. It'll rebuild your mouth. One of the activities of good bacteria and plaque, well, we call it plaque, but it's really being referred to now by preventative doctors as a biofilm. They're not really calling it plaque anymore because plaque has a bad connotation, like it's evil, it's bad, it's 100% bad. Plaque isn't 100% bad. Plaque is supposed to be there. It's actually healing when it's under control and when you have enough good bacteria and it's not too thick. Because the plaque with the good bacteria takes minerals and rebuilds the dentin of your teeth. Keeps your teeth, because you've lost your enamel. You're in your 40s, you don't have enamel anymore. You need to rebuild the dentin, the plaque rebuild the dentin. By the way, one thing that seems to help that is drinking some green tea. Don't put sugar in it. Sugar's really bad for your gum health and your oral health. We'll explain that in a minute. Green tea seems to not affect the good bacteria. It seems to affect the bad bacteria, like the ones that cause bad breath and the ones that cause dental caries and the ones that cause even Alzheimer's. And it helps control viruses and yeasts. I mean, it's a good guy. We've adapted to green tea, or green tea has adapted to us. I don't know how it works, but green tea is good for oral health. There's a lot of studies on that. So the bacteria in the plaque remineralize your teeth. But it also, the biofilm, what we used to call plaque, the biofilm in your mouth reduces your sensitivity. Like some people are sensitive to like cold water or certain foods cause their teeth to hurt and their gums to hurt. These bacteria in the plaque and the plaque itself actually reduces oral sensitivity. So you want some plaque. The other thing, and a major, huge benefit of the bacteria in your mouth is they create nitric oxide. And nitric oxide is the fountain of youth. It's the elixir of youth, like I said before. Its production is decreased with a bad diet and obesity and diabetes and heart disease and things like that. And the production of nitric oxide declines with age, but nitric oxide is essential for muscle function, circulation, brain health, healing, the immune system. We'll get into all that. We're going to get into all that because nitric oxide, like I said, is the fountain of youth. So what is that? And by the way, that production of nitric oxide starts to fail you in your 40s. But the good bacteria in your mouth can feed on things in healthy foods called nitrates and create nitric oxide, and you're back in the ball game of good health and wellness again, and well-being, because this is also good, believe it or not, for your mood. So what is that one terrible habit that can destroy your health? Mouthwash. Okay? Studies show that when you use mouthwash, when you start to use mouthwash, your blood pressure goes up within 2 to 3 days. Why? Because you're killing off the good bacteria that create nitric oxide. And the nitric oxide opens up your blood vessels, which helps restore normal blood flow, reduces vascular resistance, and improves your blood pressure. So gargling, what is it, 60 million Americans? I forgot what the figure is. Some huge figure, like 60 million Americans gargle every morning. Gargling destroys your health. You're making less nitric oxide. You need nitric oxide for wellness and well-being. And because you're making less in your blood vessels, you need to make it out of nitrate in foods. If you kill the good bacteria in your mouth, you can't make the nitric oxide out of the nitrates in good foods. So I'll tell you some nitrate-containing foods later, but they're healthy foods like carrots and beets and lettuce. And the nitric oxide, when it diminishes, one of the first things that happens is your arteries start to get crusty and clogged and your blood pressure goes up, and yeah, it's just bad. It's just a bad thing. So if you look at some of the labels on gargle, on mouthwash, it says kills 99% of bacteria. Well, it's killing the good ones, not just the bad ones. So you're going to have more sensitive teeth. Your immune system won't function well. Eventually, you're going to have heart disease more than likely, but your blood pressure will certainly go up. You're going to reduce circulation to your brain, which is bad because it's one of the causes of dementia, or at least, decreased mental acuity, decreased cognitive function, poorer memory. You're going to have poorer healing, a poorer immune system, because you need nitric oxide to fight off things like coronavirus and other viruses. A higher risk of certain cancers. It's just not a good thing. So the first thing you do for your mouth is ditch the mouthwash. That's the first thing you do. Now, I think this episode is long enough already. I've got so much more to say on this whole thing. So let me wrap it up by saying, hey, the first thing to good oral health, eat a healthy diet with a lot of healthy fruits, like 2 servings of healthy fruit a day, like blueberries and orange and apple, things like that. 3, 4, 5 servings of healthy vegetables, especially green leafy vegetables and carrots and, things like that. These are so good for you. They're good for your oral microbiome. And like I said, ditch the mouthwash. So my name is Jerry Hickey. I'm a nutritional pharmacist. And like I said before, all of the podcast episodes from Invite you could get for free anywhere you listen to podcasts. I'm pretty sure we're pretty universal at this point. Or you could just go to invitehealth.com/podcast. And please join me in the next episode of the Invite podcast, because I'm going to talk further about, hey, how do you have a healthy oral microbiome? What can you do to keep it healthy? Because it's the core. Don't forget, your mouth is open to the world, to the universe, to the entire environment, and you're putting things in your mouth. And there's so much to discuss here, and it's really interesting, and it's like very clever information that's coming out now. I wish I was back in research. I got to tell you, I feel I want to volunteer somewhere in a lab, like at least 1 day a week. It's just fascinating. But I don't know if they take volunteers in any of these really good labs, but it would be cool. Okay, Jerry Hickey signing off. Please join me in the next installment of this podcast. Thanks.